Hello everyone, I'm Jill the Wandering Stamper, coming to you again to make a fun fold card that I think you'll love. We are making a 3D window card. It's so super cute. It's very 3D, as you can see. It's fun to make, and we're going to be using some really pretty paper today. This is a very happy color combo, so I think you'll enjoy that. And we'll be playing with the Circle Sayings stamp set. I think that this gets a little overlooked, but it's so versatile and so fun to play with. So let's get started with that and follow me along to make this card. Okay, so as you can see, we're using some really pretty colors today. We're going to do some die cutting, do some stamping, cutting, folding. This is a pretty fancy card, but it's not hard to make at all. And the only thing you want to keep in mind is you may need a little extra postage because there is a lot of cardstock to it. But I think it's totally worth it to give somebody you love something really extra special. So if it takes 2 stamps, it takes 2 stamps. But let's get started. So as I mentioned, we're going to use the Circle Sayings photo polymer stamp set. Boy, I can't talk today. It also has a great punch. It's a circle punch that works perfect with these. We're not going to use the circle punch today, but you totally could. That punch is, I think it's a 2.5 inch punch. It's really versatile for lots of stamps. So it's a great punch to have if you want to get that as well. But as I said, we're not using it today, but it is something you want to have if you have this stamp set. And then we are going to use these papers. I love these papers. They're really pretty. This is going to be a very feminine card, but it's the Bright and Beautiful 6x6 Designer Series paper. And this paper has, I mean, you can make masculine and feminine cards with this paper. There's lots of pretty colors. I love how vibrant it is. So I picked out a color combo that I think one of my friends will really love. So let's get started. So we have this paper, as you know, Stampin' Up! Has everything color coordinated. So we're going to use some Bubble Bath for the base for the cardstock, which coordinates beautifully with these colors. So we're going to use that, and then we'll use some scraps of basic white cardstock. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is get out our paper cutter, and we are going to basically cut a full sheet into 4 pieces. So on the long side, we're going to do a 5.5 cut, which cuts the paper in half. And then we're going to do 4.25, which cuts it in half the other way. So you're going to have 4 pieces when you're done. You're going to be using all 4 of these. Okay, once you have your 4 pieces cut, now you're going to score them at 2 1/8, and that's going to be for our fold. So I'm going to put that on 2 1/8. Give it a score. Do that for all 4 pieces. This is the great thing about this cutter, is everything's on it. Everything you need to cut and score is on it, so it makes it super duper easy. All right, so once those are scored at 2 1/8, you can set those aside. And then the next thing we want to do is cut our Designer Series paper, and that is going to be for the bend on the front of the card. So I like the striped paper. I kind of like the contrast of the stripes and the polka dots. So I'm going to figure out which way I want to have the stripes. I think I'm going to do them this way. And I'm going to cut my paper at 4.5 by 5. I had to think about which way I wanted to cut my paper. So I'm going to make this, I want my card to sit this way. So if you have a directional paper, figure out how you want your card to lay before you cut it, because it's not square, it's rectangular. So we're going to do 4.5 by 5. So our card is going to sit my particular card is going to be this way. So once you have that 4.5 by 5, you know, I finally got my new blades, and of course I didn't put one on, but I figured out what was wrong with my blade. My stuff gets thrown around when we travel. Sometimes it gets, if we hit a lot of bumps, and I broke one of the little teeth off of this, so that's why it's been falling off lately. But I did just get some new ones. I've just got to put it on there. So if you have a blade that falls off, that could be what happened to it. All right, so we're on our 4.5 side. We're going to score a 1/2 inch on each side. And that is going to allow us to attach it to the front of the card. So once that's scored, you're just going to fold it down like that. Use your bone folder. I do it right away just because I don't have to stop and do it later. Just give it a nice little press. Okay, so that's so that you can see where your border is, because we are going to be cutting out a spot in the middle. So we're going to set that aside. And then we need a piece of designer series paper that is 2 by 5 3/8. So this is where our polka dot paper is going to come in. Now I decided I could do all 8 pieces as polka dot, or I could do some polka dot and some of this paper, which I thought was pretty. So I think that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to cut 4 of these. So they're going to be 2 by 5 3/8. I'm going to do my 5 3/8 first. And then cut my 2 inches. And since this is 6-inch paper, that comes out perfectly. And then I'm going to do my other 4, so 5 3/8. And then I'm going to do 2. And 2. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Now, just a little trick, you can, with designer series paper, cut 2 at once if you want to. So let's do it that way one time. So I'm going to cut it 5 3/8. And I want this little strip here to show, that's why I'm cutting this end. And then you're going to cut 2 inches. Now remember, we only need 4, so I'm just going to do this twice. So there's 2. And there's 2. It saves you a little bit of time. You just want to be mindful that you have your edges lined up so everything's even. And there's your 2. So there's some scraps. Put those aside. All right, so we have our 8 pieces. Our 8 pieces, our front piece, our middle piece, and we have some scrap, and I'm just going to cut my scrap a little smaller so it fits in my die cutting machine a little bit better. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, I like to kind of build my inside first. I just feel like it's a little bit easier to do it that way. So we have 4 sheets of bubble gum. So we're going to get our silicone craft sheet out. As soon as I figure out where I stashed it, there it is. It blended in. All right. So I'm going to stagger these. So I'm going to do a panel that has, so I'm going to do a panel like this, then a panel like this, then a panel like this, and a panel like this. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my first 2 pieces and put down my adhesive. This paper is so pretty. And then you can see your score line. So it's just a tiny little edge. So I just kind of create my border and then make sure it's straight as I'm putting it down. Of course, my very first one is crooked. All right. We're going to do the same thing. And then the next two pieces I'm going to do are these. And then I want to make sure that my little stripes go the same way. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but if you're picky about that stuff, be mindful of it. So I want this one to go next to it. I really like this back pattern too. I need to come up with a good card to use this. All right. Like that. Set that aside. We have two more of these. I tell you, the reverse side of it would be really pretty too. Just remember, if you're using a paper that has direction to it, that you cut everything the correct direction so you don't end up with something not making a whole lot of sense. Okay. And then the last two pieces. And I like that this is a light color because I don't have to, you could add a piece of a basic white in place of one of these pieces. So you could use that to write your message or your sentiment, your greeting, whatever. But since this is a light color, you can write right on it. So I don't have to do that. But you can do it if you want. It's your card, right? All right. So these are done. So I'm gonna set that aside for a moment. And then I'm gonna get my cutter. We're gonna address this. So this is the piece that's gonna be on the front. And I went ahead and scored and folded these so I could see exactly where my margin is. And I'm going to use, this comes from the rectangle dies. Use any die you have. You just want it to fit in the center nicely, and you want it to have a little bit of border around it. So you kind of create a window. There's lots of shapes in the Stampin' Up! Dies that you could use. You could use different shapes, different sizes. You just want it to make a good window. I'm going to use some of this handy dandy Post-it tape and get this exactly where I want it before I grab my die cutting machine. I love this stuff because it holds your dies in place, and you can it peels off nicely. It's not going to ruin your paper, and it's reusable, so you can get several uses out of it. So I just kind of keep it stuck on my cutter, but my current pieces have worn out, so we got some new ones out. So get my cutter. I know this is going to be tight on the screen, bear with me. My RV table is not very large, so I don't have a lot to work with. If any of you own an RV or have spent any time in an RV, you know those tables are not full-size tables. So I'm going to run this through my die cutter. And then there's my middle. So I'm going to set that aside. See how nicely these peel off. Just peel this off, pop this out. I might actually use this in the middle of my card. And then I'm going to get my scrap of white. While I have this out, I'm going to go ahead and cut this with the smaller one. This is the smaller one, isn't it? Yes. No, this is the smaller one. I had to think about that for a second. All right, once you get this stuff done, the rest of the card is pretty darn easy. So we have our center cut out, and we have this little piece here which layers nicely, and everything actually comes together. So I think we're going to use all three pieces. Set these dies aside, and we're going to do some stamping. So I don't have my scrap paper, but that's okay. We've got this. We need it, actually. I'll use a scrap of this. Okay, so for this card front, I'm going to use the Cupcake. Love this Cupcake, because this is going to be a birthday card. Actually use this stamp. All right, and I'm going to stamp my Cupcake in Memento ink because we're going to use our alcohol-based markers to color it in. So I'm going to make sure I ink that up nicely. And a little tip, I always forget to do it, but it is handy, is get your paper piercing mat out when you stamp your cupcakes, because it makes that super nice looking. Just that extra foam gives it a nice crisp look. And then stamp your cards, stamp your stamps off if you can, because it keeps your scrubber from getting super, super dirty. A dirty scrubber is no fun. Now I'm going to look for the lid. Here it is. So now I'm going to get out my Moody Mauve. Moody Mauve is a really pretty color that complements this. So I'm going to use the Moody Mauve to stamp the circle. And this circle says celebrate. So I'm going to put that on there. And, you know, a little trick, you can kind of figure out how you want it. And then I put it on my block just because I want the word celebrate to kind of be lined up on the top. So I'm going to ink that up. Probably going to put my head in your camera. I apologize. And I'm going to stamp that on there like that. So that pulls in some more of the pink, and we're going to add some more to it in a moment. All right, so that's done. Really super cute. And I kind of made it offset, so if I wanted to add something here, I can. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet, but now we're going to get out our alcohol-based markers. If you don't have these are a total game changer. I grabbed the bubble bath because that pulls in our bubble bath paper, and then I think I'm going to use the light pecan pie for the cupcake wrapper. So these alcohol-based markers are so good. I don't use any other markers anymore. I used to have all the Stampin' Up! Markers, and now I just use these because they work so well. So I'm just lightly coloring these in, trying not to get out of the lines. I really hate that. And the great thing about the alcohol-based markers is they dry without any lines. So unlike a regular marker, if you go over one area more than once, you'll have streaks. Once the alcohol evaporates on these markers, there's no streaks. You get a solid color. So I'm going to give that a moment to dry, and I'm going to grab my light bubble bath and do the same thing to the cupcake frosting. And I think I'm going to use the dark for the top of the cupcake. I could just make the frosting go all the way down, but I'm going to try this time. Make it a chocolate cupcake with pink frosting. And then while I have this out, I'm going to use my dark color to kind of enhance some of the lines in the cupcake paper. And then I'm going to go and grab the dark bubble bath and do the same thing. I'm going to highlight some of the little marks on the cupcake. This is what's great about these markers. It makes you look like you're really good at coloring. But we're just using the elements that the artists who created this used. So you give that a moment to dry, then go back over it with your light color. And it just kind of blends it all together, but you still get that shading once it dries. So it's a great way to kind of elevate your images. So now I'll just kind of lightly go over my icing again, and it just, again, it's going to dry without any streaks, but you're going to see where you enhanced it. So that looks good. So we're going to set these aside, and I have some sequins. These are retired, but I felt like they looked really good with this card. So I'm taking my liquid glue and I'm going to put a little dot of liquid glue where each of these dots are, and then I think I'm going to do a couple up here as well. And so everywhere I just put a glue dot, I'm going to drop a sequence. So I'm going to grab, I think I'm going to stick with the pink. Using my take your pick tool to grab those. And if you don't like pink, if you're not a pink girl, you could do this card with any color combo. Whoop. My finger's a little sticky. These weird things always happen when I'm doing a video. Okay. And here's one more. I like how it's got a little shine to it. That's why I decided to use these. There's also some little ones, so I think we're going to use this little one here. They also kind of look like bubbles. Maybe put one here. Whatever looks good to you. And since these are iridescent, they kind of look like they have all the colors that we're using. So I wish they still had these. There may actually be something similar available. I'll have to look. And we'll use this one. Okay, so we'll give that a moment to dry. Put these away before we have a catastrophe. All right, so now we're going to start assembling everything. So the first thing I like to do, I'm going to go ahead and pick one of these panels so that I can add my sentiment to the back before I glue it on. It's just easier to stamp on that way. If you don't do it that way, you can stamp it. You can stamp it after you attach everything. It's fine. So I could use Moody Mauve if I wanted to, or I could use the Memento ink. I think I'm going to go with the Memento ink. I'm not going to use my matte this time because this is already on a couple sheets of paper, so it'll be fine. But I'm going to add the Because You're Awesome. And then I can write my message below. So that works out really nicely. Clean off my stamp. All right, now we're going to put this card together. There is one piece we did not cut out. We are going to need, get my color out before I forget. You're going to need a little mechanism that's going to attach. It's going to attach your front piece on. It's sort of the little bendy mechanism. So what did I do? 2. So you need a piece that is, it's the sort of the pop out mechanism. It's going to be 1 by 2.5. I'm just cutting out a piece of scrap here. 1 inch. And then you're going to score it at a 1/2 inch, just like we did everything else. This is going to be the little piece that helps your middle piece pop out. All right, forgot about that piece. So you're going to bend this down like that, and it's going to glue on. But I like to take my bone folder and give it a little curl. It's just going to help it round a little bit, and it breaks down the fibers and makes it a little bit more bendy, so it'll sit upright. All right, so we're going to set that aside. So to attach everything, super simple. Now remember that because we're using 2 patterns, I'm going to be alternating those. So you want to think about that if you're using 2 patterns. So I'm going to give this a fold. I'm going to give all of these a fold actually. And crease them with the bone folder because you want them to be nice and folded. It's going to make it easier to attach everything together. All right. So I'm going to take my adhesive. Now remember, if you're using something directional, be mindful of your top and bottom. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm using the Stampin' Seal Plus. I want this to be strong because it's a moving part. Now I'm going to, this is polka dotted, so I'm going to use I'm going to do that one last. I'm going to use my best eye here and attach these, and you just want the ends to line up, and you want it to not go over your fold line in the middle. But if you cut all your paper at the same height, it's fine. So see how that works? So now I want to add a polka dot here. And you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to do this with all 4 pieces. Okay, now I want to use my piece that I've made the message on, and I want it to be, let's see, I want it to face this way. So go ahead and add my adhesive here. Okay, and then your last piece just gets glued to your first piece, like that. Okay, so there we go. So that's the base of our card, pretty easy. So I want this to be my back, so I'm going to work on the front now. So this will be the front. Okay, so now we want to attach this piece. So remember, we folded this and this. So it's going to go on here like that. So if you need to give it a little squish with the bone folder, go ahead. And then I'm going to add my adhesive. Again, I'm using the Stampin' Seal Plus because this is going to get a lot of movement, and I want to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. And then once you do that, you're going to fold these back down so they're kind of in place for the next step. All right. Now you want to eyeball where the center is, and if it helps you mark your center, I just kind of like to eyeball it and then figure out, do you want the pink at the top or the bottom? You know, where do you want your stripes? So that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so there's that piece. And then remember we had this piece. This is going to go in the center. So I'm going to add the adhesive, fold it down, eyeball the center. It's not really a big deal if it's not perfect, but you want to get it as close as possible. Okay, now we have this piece. So it's going to go in the middle. I think I'm going to pop some dimensionals on this. I think that would be interesting. This is going to be one of those cards that you see people put out for a long time, sometimes a year. I visited some parents of the friends I grew up with, and it was so sweet. Both of the moms that I went to visit, who were like my mom, my second moms and third moms when I was growing up, they keep all my cards. And they both took me into the rooms that used to be my friends' rooms when they were kids and showed me that they keep them all on display. And it was just, oh, it was so sweet. It just made me so happy. I love making cards and having people enjoy them so much that they keep them forever. All right, so because our dies line up, I just kind of use that as my guide and pop that on there. Give it a press, and then once you press it, you can just adjust it. There we go. And I lost a little rhinestone somewhere. So you can use glue dots. Mine were not quite dry. That was the problem. I rushed it a little. I'm going to have a sequence stuck to me somewhere today and find it. Find one more little sequence. This looks like a happy little sequence. There you go. You stay on there. Okay, our card is done. It really wasn't that hard. Initially, there's a lot of little cutting stuff. Oh, look, I found my sequence. Okay, so there's our card. As you can see, pops up perfectly. There's a place on the back to write your messages. You could use white paper here if you wanted to, but there we go. And let me show you, and it folds completely flat and fits in a regular envelope. So there's our first one. Here's one I made earlier, and I used a different set of dies, basically the same card, but I used a different set of dies that are retired. It's the scalloped dies, so if you have those, that makes a really cute card as well. This card, I used having an avalanche over here. I used the Sentimental Park and the suite of products. So I used the polka dot paper and did my stamps, did some die cutting, added some flowers to the outside. So it sits up and it has that 3D effect. And then on the back, I left a white panel to write on, and then I used the same paper that's on the front on the back just for interest. So really sweet card. And then the third card, I think this is my favorite. This is the Rhino Ready set. And I stamped him on polka dot paper that came with the free paper that came with the last celebration. I really like the polka dots, so I grabbed those, stamped him in the polka dots, and colored in his horn, and then cut the bird off because I didn't really want it. I thought I might add a bird with a die, but I didn't really want the bird. So we added him, and then I cut the grass out and glued it behind this piece so it's sort of 3D, and added some of these palm leaves. So super cute card. I used the Radiating Stitches dies to create the inside and to cut this piece out. So this actually coordinates really well with the Rhino Ready bundle. So if you haven't seen the Radiating Stitches dies, those are definitely worth a look. And then on the back, where I'm going to write my message, I added some more leaves just to make it fun. So there's my 3 cards. Super cute. I hope you like them. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I will have all of the cutting dimensions and measurements on my blog, and I'll have that linked below. I also have on my website my online store, so if there's anything here you would like to purchase, you can go there and shop away. I also have some handy tools that are helpful in the scrap room, craft room, and have lots of other video blogs on there for you to see as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great weekend, a great week, and I will see you soon. Thanks again. This is Jill, the Wandering Stamper.